The season already feels like early summer, and during the day, it's a bit warm. My daughter, Annabelle, goes to school energetically every day, and recently, we received a letter from the school advising us to send her with a water bottle. One morning, my husband, Asher, called. He should have already left for work, so it was unusual to receive a call at this hour.
Hey, there's been a call from the school.
His anxious voice made me uneasy. Since we had provided Asher's mobile number as an emergency contact at the school, it wasn't surprising that they would reach out to him.
Annabelle had an accident and was taken to the hospital by ambulance.
Asher, is that true?
Come quickly. She's saying, Mom, Mom.
No, because she's not ours. At that moment, I said it with conviction. Annabelle Asher was talking about wasn't our child. But perhaps he was flustered. He practically shouted over the phone.
What are you saying? She's truly our daughter.
You wouldn't know, having left early in the morning.
Ha!
Could you have dialed the wrong number? When I conveyed evidence that the Annabelle Asher mentioned wasn't our daughter, he fell silent and hung up. He must be quite pale right now. That day, Asher didn't come back home. My name is Juliana Delicat. I'm a homemaker who also works part-time while raising my daughter. I met my husband, Asher, through a shared hobby, and after about 2 years of dating, we got married. Our adorable child, whom we named Annabelle, is turning 6 this year. She's now officially a first grader since spring.
Hey, Mom. Do you think I'll be able to make friends when I start elementary school?
On the eve of the entrance ceremony, Annabelle asked me this question with a restless expression. Are you worried?
Yeah.
Well then, let me work some magic.
Magic?
Abracadabra. May Annabelle make lots of friends. I twirled my index finger in the air, and Annabelle looked at me with wide-eyed surprise. Yes, now everything will be fine.
Really? Truly?
Her round eyes bore into mine, and I couldn't help but chuckle. Yeah, truly fine. Now, it's time to sleep. We wouldn't want the magic to wear off. With a mischievous tone, I said that, and Annabelle dashed off to her bedroom, exclaiming, "Wow." Her adorable yet amusing reaction made it hard for me to suppress my laughter. Glancing at the clock, I realized it was already past 11 p.m. Will Asher and Annabelle cross paths today? The thought made me sigh. Although we live together, Asher, Annabelle, and I, we haven't been seeing each other much lately. Asher works from early morning until late at night, and he usually returns home after Annabelle is asleep. Only Asher's portion of dinner sits on the living room table. Wondering whether I should leave a note or just go to bed, it's become routine. Maybe I should sleep now. I have to wake up early tomorrow. I've already informed Asher that tomorrow is Annabelle's entrance ceremony. Annabelle believes he'll be there, and I want to believe it too. But somewhere deep down, I wonder if he might not come. Leaving a note, I got into bed. I work part-time, although my schedule isn't as demanding as Asher's. Consequently, I handle all the household chores and childcare on my own, juggling both housework and my part-time job. As Annabelle starts elementary school, there will be more events like parent-teacher meetings. I don't think I can manage everything alone, and I've been anxious about when I'll be able to discuss this with Asher. The entrance ceremony was quite grand. I felt relieved to see familiar faces from Annabelle's kindergarten and meet acquaintances.
Hey, where's Dad?
After the ceremony, Annabelle looked at me curiously. It seems he couldn't make it today due to work. It's a shame. As expected, Asher had left for work early in the morning. We barely crossed paths a few minutes after waking up, and we couldn't even have a conversation. The memory weighed on my mind, and I suppressed a sigh. I decided to invite Annabelle to lunch, hoping that dining out would distract her from feeling lonely. She was delighted, and I wondered if it would help ease the loneliness a bit. I felt a little unfair to manipulate the situation that way. A few days after the entrance ceremony, I found a letter in the mailbox. It was a plain white envelope with no sender information, addressed simply to Ms. Delicat. Unsure whether I should open it, I decided to do so after Annabelle went to bed. That night, after dinner, bath time, and checking her homework, Annabelle fell asleep. Quietly, I went to the living room and cautiously opened the envelope. What could this be? Inside were several photographs. As I took them out, I couldn't believe what I saw. Wait. Is this Asher? The photos depicted Asher, happily playing in a park somewhere. His smile was radiant, the same smile he hadn't directed at me or Annabelle in years. But the recipient of that smile was a child playing alongside him. Not a relative, not a neighbor, someone entirely unknown. The confusion was overwhelming. Where was this place? Whose child was Asher playing with? And who took these photos? The uncertainty left me bewildered, and I desperately wanted to talk to Asher. Just then, I heard the sound of the front door opening.
I'm home.
He mumbled, sounding weary, and entered the living room. I instinctively stood up and confronted Asher with the photos. Look, Asher, these were in the mailbox today. Pictures of you. What's going on? As I fired off the questions, Asher lazily examined the photos, his eyes briefly darting around. But he quickly pushed the photos back toward me.
I don't know. That's not me in those pictures. It's someone who looks like me.
Really?
We're in an age where AI can create photos, you know. It's probably just a prank.
But why?
I have no idea. Don't ask me. I always say you should handle household matters.
With his tie loosened, Asher headed straight for the bedroom. I sat there in shock, staring at the photos again. Was he right? Were these AI-generated photos meant as a prank? It seemed too elaborate for a simple joke. And Asher's eyes when he saw the pictures, the uncertainty was the most suspicious part. Just to be sure, I showed the photos to our in-laws, asking if they recognized the child. But they had no idea. I suspected infidelity, but their disbelieving looks made me doubt myself.
It must be some mistake. Asher is working hard.
Their words silenced me. Still, the unease lingered, and I decided to hire a private investigator to get to the bottom of it. Regardless of the outcome, I vowed to accept it. 2 weeks passed. The season already felt like early summer, and during the day, it was slightly warm. Annabelle continued to go to school energetically, and we received a letter advising us to send her with a water bottle. One morning, Asher called. He should have already left for work, so it was unusual to receive a call at this hour. Hello?
Hey, there's been a call from the school.
His anxious voice made me uneasy. Since we had provided Asher's mobile number as an emergency contact at the school, it wasn't surprising that they would reach out to him.
Annabelle had an accident, and she was taken to the hospital by ambulance.
Is that true, Asher?
Come quickly! She said, Mom, Mom!
I don't want to go. She isn't ours. At that moment, I said with conviction that Annabelle Asher was talking about was not our daughter. He must have been flustered, shouting over the phone.
What are you saying? She's truly our daughter.
Our Annabelle is home today, taking a sick day from school because she caught a cold.
Ha!
You wouldn't know since you left early this morning.
But
Anyway, Annabelle is right in front of me. Did you dial the wrong number in a panic? Asher swallowed hard and hung up without saying anything. He must be pale-faced by now. That day, Asher didn't come home. I threw away the meal I had prepared for him. The next day, Asher called multiple times. During my break at work, I reluctantly answered, and Asher's voice sounded awkward.
About yesterday.
What? I can't hear you.
Well, once. Can you listen to my explanation?
I'm on my lunch break now. Don't call until I reach out to you. I snapped back with an irritated tone. I could hear Asher's voice on the other end saying, "Wait." But I ignored it and hung up. What more could he possibly explain now? Filled with boiling frustration, I spent the next few days. On a bright and sunny day, I stepped outside to weed my home garden. I wanted to tackle the task before the weeds grew too vigorously. The rain from last night had softened the soil, making the weeding somewhat easier. Armed with gardening gloves and a garbage bag, I got to work. Unexpectedly, someone called out to me. When I turned around, there stood an unfamiliar woman. She tightly pursed her lips and seemed eager to say something. Can I help you? I asked.
My name is Jade. May I talk to you now?
She said only that, looking quite nervous, and pursed her lips. Yes. Standing here is not good either, so please come inside, I said, suspicious but inviting her into the house. I led her to the living room and served coffee, and Jade began to speak.
It's about Asher.
What? I couldn't comprehend the situation, and my mind was in turmoil.
Please let him liberate.
The situation left me bewildered, my thoughts in disarray. Liberate him? Are you talking about some religious matter? I was puzzled.
No.
Jade said firmly.
Until now, I've endured it, but after this incident, I thought it was about time we lived as a family. Annabelle is waiting too.
Wait a moment. Before that, how do you know the address here?
Asher's driver's license had this address.
I was getting more confused. By seeing Asher's driver's license, what do you mean? And what do you mean by this incident? As I expressed my bewilderment, Jade seemed surprised and taken aback.
Asher and I are dating with marriage in mind. You know about Annabelle being taken to the hospital after an accident recently, right?
Hearing that, I realized it was about the incident when Asher called by mistake the other day. Could that child at the time be her daughter, Annabelle? As I blinked in surprise, Jade also wore a puzzled expression.
Huh? But you're his older sister, aren't you? You know, right?
His older sister? You mean I'm Asher's older sister?
That's what Asher told me.
Feeling that something was off, I decided to start by understanding the relationship. Apologies, but I am Asher's wife. Annabelle, who just started elementary school, is our daughter.
Huh? You're joking, right? Asher said you were his divorced and returned sister and niece.
What? As I furrowed my brow, Jade continued.
Asher feels sorry for you both and has been letting you live in his house.
What?
That's what I heard. Isn't that true?
That's completely wrong. Asher and I are married, and we have a daughter named Annabelle. We live in this house as a family. Jade continued, her voice trembling.
But Asher always plays with Annabelle, takes her to the park.
The park? I recalled the photo in the envelope that had arrived in the mail. She had taken that picture.
Yes, I put the photo in there. I thought if I applied pressure, you'd leave on your own.
Asher said those were prank photos created by an AI, but it seems he was lying.
Asher wouldn't say something like that. Those photos are about us.
She trailed off, tears streaming down her face as she tried to suppress her sobs.
We were even planning to register our marriage when Annabelle's birthday came.
Jade sobbed, muttering, "Why?" For a while, we sat in silence. Neither of us knew what to do, feeling lost. One thing was certain amidst the soul-crushing emotions. Asher had deceived both me and Jade. No, he had deceived Annabelle too. The weight of this betrayal was immense. Breaking the silence, Jade spoke first.
I apologize for losing my composure. I'll go home for now and come back later. I need to hear the truth from Asher too.
Quietly, I stopped her as she tried to rise from her seat and said, Jade, I also want to hear the truth from Asher.
Huh?
But think about it. He's the man who deceived both of us and Annabelle.
Deceived. Yes, you're right.
Do you really think someone like that will tell us the whole truth? After hesitating, Jade shook her head.
I don't think so. I feel like he'll just pile on more lies.
That's entirely possible. Shall we join forces? Let's make Asher confess the truth and overtake him. I extended my right hand for a handshake and declared.
I agree with you. I can't stand not knowing the truth.
And so, we devised a plan to extract the truth from Asher. A few days later, I entrusted Annabelle to my in-laws and headed to a certain location. As I left my parents-in-law's house, Annabelle looked at me with a worried expression.
I want to come too.
Today, Grandpa and Grandma are ordering pizza.
I want to be with Mom.
Though she was unusually stubborn, I managed to leave her with my mother-in-law. Annabelle must have sensed the tension in my face. Along the way, I silently apologized to her multiple times. The place I was heading to wasn't pleasant. It was the restaurant where Asher and Jade would have dinner tonight. Jade was also leaving Annabelle with her parents. I entered the restaurant where the two of them were supposed to enjoy their dinner. A waiter stopped me and asked if I had a reservation. I have a reservation with those two. I pointed to Asher and Jade, who were sitting a little further away. The waiter apologized and stepped back, allowing me to approach their table. Asher was visible from the aisle. As I walked toward him, Asher noticed me. His expression was comically surprised, as if he'd seen a ghost. Asher, it's been a while. How's Annabelle doing?
Juliana? Why are you here?
While Asher blinked in surprise, I slammed the divorce papers and alimony claim documents onto the table from my bag. Do you understand what this means? In front of the bewildered Asher, Jade also pulled out a paper from her bag.
Indeed, there's something I'd like to give you too.
The paper was labeled alimony claim. Jade's calm eyes didn't hold any trace of a smile. Asher glanced back and forth between the two of us. Ignoring his reaction, I sat next to Jade and watched Asher's eyes well up with tears. With his shoulders slumped, Asher gazed at the paper in front of him. At this point, just confess everything.
No, it's not what you think.
How is it different? Please explain.
I'm sorry, but...
Since when? Since when did you start a relationship with Jade? Asher, his face drained of color, hesitantly began to speak.
It was after I found out Juliana was pregnant. You stopped paying attention to me, and I made a terrible mistake.
Unbelievable.
Jade covered her mouth with both hands, clearly shocked.
But, I loved both of you.
Don't play games. Asher, can you say the same thing to my Annabelle? To Jade's Annabelle too?
This is the truth. I couldn't choose.
His absurd explanation left both Jade and me speechless. To claim love for both of us in this situation was utterly absurd. Suppressing my boiling anger, I refrained from knocking him down right then and there. Please divorce me. I can no longer live with Asher. The waitstaff looked at us, confronting each other in a stylish space, with concern.
I understand. I agree to the divorce.
Asher slowly took a pen from his breast pocket and signed the divorce papers. In front of both me and Jade, he was confronted with his own sins and probably couldn't say anything more. Even if he had said something, it would have been in vain, but it was too clean and a little scary. You're taking this rather lightly.
I'm happy to be able to divorce you quickly.
He said something insincere with a sullen face. He probably admitted it early in hopes of reducing the alimony. But that thought is naive. Just so you know, I won't agree to a reduction in alimony.
What? What are you talking about?
You're well aware that you've been leading a double life with me and Jade, having affairs with both of us. I pulled out an envelope with the results of the investigation from the detective agency. Jade's child and our Annabelle are in the same grade. Isn't that strange?
You hired a detective agency? You doubted me.
The day the photos were sent, you told me to take care of the house and left everything to me. Asher was speechless under my fierce demeanor. You were always playing the father at either house when I was pregnant and when Jade was pregnant.
This is a huge betrayal. Don't you think, Asher?
Please settle things properly. Asher was at a loss for words and nervously looked over the amount on the invoice. Both were very high amounts. Afterward, Asher repeatedly apologized to me and Jade, trying to get a reduction. However, his actions were malicious, and when we refused to lower the alimony, he became quiet. The waitstaff and other customers looked on with concern as Jade and I left the restaurant together. Asher was still sitting there, crying and shrinking. When I walked back briskly, I felt a sense of relief and naturally smiled. I filed for divorce the next day. There's no time to indulge in sentimentality, like being single again. I still have to clean up the house where I lived with Asher. I packed all of Asher's used dishes, towels, toothbrushes, etc., into trunks and cardboard boxes and sent them to his parents' house. Since it's in the same city, it should arrive within 2 or 3 days. I informed the in-laws about the divorce. Initially, they opposed it, but after presenting evidence of Asher's and Jade's actions and the detective agency's findings, they had nothing to say. In the end, they apologized for what Asher had done.
I'm sorry for the trouble. It's very sad that we won't be able to see Annabelle, but it can't be helped.
Although the in-laws did nothing wrong, I also felt it was a pity that Annabelle would not be able to see her grandparents. I thought maybe it would be okay to let her see them about once a month, and when I suggested this, the in-laws were pleased. As for Asher, he left the house where Annabelle and I live and is now living in a cheap apartment. The house was in both Asher's and my name, but when we settled the property, it was changed to my name. Asher has taken on debt to pay a substantial amount of alimony and is working tirelessly day and night to repay it. Occasionally, he calls my smartphone, tearfully apologizing.
Juliana, I'm sorry. Can we start over again?
It's impossible. Don't make me say the same thing over and over.
Please, let's get back together. This time, I'll take proper care of Annabelle.
You're being persistent. If you say anything more, I'll go to the police.
The police.
I'll file a report for stalking. When I said that, Asher started sobbing and abruptly hung up the phone. Since then, I haven't received any more calls from him. I heard later that Jade had also received similar calls several times.
Asher, to be clear, it's a nuisance. Please don't call anymore.
Jade said that firmly.
Even you, Jade.
If you call again, I'll go to the police.
With that, Jade hung up the phone. I imagine she was pursing her lips tightly, just like when we first met. Since then, she hasn't received any more calls from Asher either. Now, it seems that Jade and her daughter Annabelle are living together, occasionally visiting her parents' home as well. And she has started to meet with me and my Annabelle. Today, we are planning to visit Jade's house, and Annabelle and I are on our way there by train.
Hey, Mom, it's exciting, isn't it?
Yes, make sure to get along well.
Sure, leave it to me.
Annabelle, who has perhaps learned this at school, puffs out her chest and says such things, which is a bit reassuring. Jade lives in the next town over, about a 10-minute train ride away. That park is also near Jade's house. It's something I don't quite see in my neighborhood. I met her through a strange twist of fate, but now she's become a mom friend with whom I can talk about anything. Maybe it's because we both liked the same man. As I think about this, the name of the station we need to get off at is announced on the train. Annabelle, we're getting off at the next station.
Okay.
Annabelle smiled excitedly. When we got off the station, I received a message from Jade.
Juliana, have you arrived at the station yet?
I have. I'm just outside the ticket gates. Perhaps because it's daytime, there aren't many people walking around. I hold Annabelle's hand with one hand and my smartphone with the other, looking around once more. We were supposed to be picked up at the meeting place, but I don't see anyone who looks like they're waiting.
Oh, Mom, over there.
Suddenly, Annabelle pulled my hand. Surprised, I turned in that direction, and there were Jade and her Annabelle. Jade was holding a parasol, giving off a cool impression.
Sorry to keep you waiting. I just got caught at that traffic light.
It's okay. We just got here. We started walking towards the park. As we talked, it felt as if we had known each other for a long time, a sense of nostalgia and closeness emerging. It seemed the same for Annabelle's, who were holding hands and frolicking despite having just met. Be careful not to fall, Annabelle! Annabelle didn't seem to hear me and kept walking ahead.
She must have been looking forward to this a lot. My Annabelle is so happy too.
Yeah. It's good that they get along so well. Since the trouble with Asher, both Jade and I have been frequently reminding our Annabelles about one thing: not to betray others. Betrayal hurts those who trusted us and can cause sadness. And sometimes, that lost trust cannot be restored. Of course, it's a bit of a difficult concept for the Annabelles right now. But it's something I want to teach them, even if I have to repeat it over and over.
Don't worry, they'll surely understand one day.
Yes, they will. As we talked, we were almost at the park. Across the traffic light in front of us, the park came into view. It wasn't clear from the photos, but there was grass and playground equipment, and it seemed quite spacious. It looked like we would be playing tag and returning home exhausted today.
Mom, I can see the park.
Despite my worries, Annabelle's eyes were shining. With our teachings in her heart, she will surely grow up freely. No, she is already growing up, without a doubt.
How did you like this story? Please remember to subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.
Sarah, please read it when you are alone.
After my daughter-in-law passed away in an accident, a letter arrived a week later. The sender was my late daughter-in-law. When I opened it, I found unbelievable events and horrifying plots written inside. I was frozen with fear.
Sarah, run away now.
Furthermore, with the last words of the letter, I realized that the series of events were not yet over. Even if danger befell me, I wouldn't regret it. To clear her regrets, I resolved in my heart to reveal the truth. My name is Sarah, and I'm 55 years old. I have a son named Jason. While he was academically bright, he had a quick temper. During his high school years, he got into trouble, even shoplifting, which was a constant worry for me. My late husband would occasionally scold him, saying,
"Anyone who does wrong must face consequences."
My husband, who instilled such values in our son, passed away 6 years ago. Jason, now in his 30s, has settled down. He married Nancy, 5 years younger than him, and they set up a new home just an hour's drive away from us. Nancy, his wife, is gentle and sincere, and we quickly became close. I learned that Nancy's parents had also passed away.
I will take good care of you from now on, Sarah.
Well, that's heartwarming. If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to ask. I was determined to support Nancy, filling the void left by her late mother. And time flew by, until 2 years had passed since my son and his wife got married. Suddenly, in the middle of the night, I received a call from my son.
Nancy has been in an accident, and she's not breathing.
What happened? I immediately inquired about the situation, but Jason, who was home alone, didn't know what had happened since he wasn't with his wife. Hoping it was some misunderstanding, I rushed to the hospital where Nancy was taken. There, I found my son slumped weakly in a chair, unable to look at me.
How did this happen?
He muttered, covering his face, still not facing me. The police were at the hospital, and they explained that Nancy had fallen into the sea while in the car. By the time they retrieved her from the water, she had already passed away. Despite being rushed to the hospital, it was too late. What a coincidence. But this story seems eerily familiar. As I listened closely to the details of the accident, I couldn't shake the feeling of resemblance to the accident that took my husband's life. You see, my husband also left in the middle of the night, saying,
"I'm going out shopping,"
only to later be found having fallen into a river, meeting his demise. Moreover, when he was discovered, the window of his car was slightly open, just like in this case. Furthermore, there was a bruise on his side, not from the accident but from something else, and the exact same bruise appeared on my husband's side. When questioned by the police, my son finally looked up and began explaining that his wife had stumbled inside the house, hitting the shelf. At that moment, I couldn't help but notice Jason blinking excessively, which struck me as rather peculiar. Can such coincidences really happen? It's as if our house is haunted by some curse. I couldn't help but feel like a terrifying monster had taken Nancy and my husband to the afterlife. Feeling incredibly uneasy, as I wallowed in despair, Jason suddenly stood up. When I looked at my son's face, it had transformed from earlier, now resolute and determined.
There's no use moping around. We need to start preparing for the funeral right away.
He patted my shoulder and swiftly began making arrangements. At that moment, I felt reassured by Jason's ability to handle difficult situations with composure. I need to pull myself together too. I want to ensure Nancy's peaceful journey. With no family for Nancy, we opted for a small family funeral, so there were hardly any mourners on the day. As I quietly scanned the venue, I noticed Jason looking at Nancy's portrait, his lips curling into a sly smile. It was a fleeting moment, so I might have misinterpreted it. However, I couldn't shake the image of my son's face from my mind, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. A week after the funeral, one of Nancy's friends visited my house. When I mentioned that the memorial portrait and other belongings were at my son's house, the friend handed me a letter enclosed in a white envelope.
"Nancy asked me to deliver this to you in case anything happened to her."
Furthermore, Nancy had spoken happily about how well I treated her. The person who brought the letter said it seemed a note of gratitude to me. After expressing my gratitude and seeing off the woman, I sat on the living room sofa with the letter in hand. Looking at the back of the envelope, there was a note with Nancy's name saying,
Please read this alone.
With a sense of dread, I opened the envelope with trembling hands and read the letter. It began with,
Jason might be getting rid of his family for insurance money.
Which shocked me to the core. As I continued reading, it revealed that 6 years ago, my husband's accident was orchestrated by our son. Furthermore, Nancy warned,
Now I might be the next target. If you receive this letter and I'm already gone, you might be in danger next. Please, run away immediately.
Unbelievable as it seemed, these words were written on the page. Nancy, who had no one else, entrusted me with this letter out of a desperate desire for help. Seeing the evidence enclosed, I couldn't help but let out a surprised, "What? This is unbelievable." In the midst of my trembling anger, I couldn't shake off my husband's words echoing in my head.
"Anyone who does wrong must face the consequences."
With that in mind, I immediately left the house with the evidence Nancy had given me to rush to the police. However, upon arriving at the police station, I felt that the letter and evidence alone might not be enough. If Nancy's assumptions were wrong, it could be disastrous. So, I reconsidered and decided to gather evidence diligently on my own. I went to my son's house, used the spare key Nancy had provided, pretended to clean while thoroughly inspecting every corner. Suddenly, I became curious about the closet. Upon opening it, I was met with an unbelievable sight. Could this be true? I couldn't believe it. Amidst shock and confusion, I composed myself and installed hidden cameras to monitor my son's actions. However, for a while, there were no particularly suspicious behaviors. Nevertheless, I meticulously reviewed the camera footage as long as time allowed. Half a year later, just as I began to think that nothing would happen, seeing my child's image on the screen made me rise from the sofa where I had been sitting. The dwindling flame of anger reignited stronger than ever, and I felt a surge of determination to vindicate my husband and daughter-in-law. I absolutely had to uncover the truth with my own hands. Anticipating a call from my son, I waited, and as expected, the call came.
Mom, I'm cooking dinner. Come over this weekend and join me.
Hearing his unusually cheerful voice, a chill ran down my spine. While inwardly acknowledging that the long-awaited day had finally arrived, I replied, trying not to reveal my suspicions. Of course, I'll come. Thank you. With a heavy bag in hand, I visited Jason's house over the weekend. My son, who had been waiting for dinner, looked puzzled when he saw what I was holding. Sorry, I made a mistake at work and accidentally ordered a ton of fried chicken. So, I ended up buying a lot. Let's eat it together. Ignoring my son's displeased expression, I quickly entered the house and lined up a bunch of fried chicken on the living room table. Can you pack the meal you made into Tupperware, Jason? I'll take it home. As soon as I finished speaking, I started munching on the chicken, completely ignoring Jason's cooking. Not touching my son's homemade dish and wasting his kindness, Jason displayed an irritated expression, then stormed off to the kitchen with heavy footsteps. After a while, my son placed a teacup filled with green tea in front of me.
Here, try this. It's a bit bitter though.
Oh, sorry. I'm really into rooibos tea right now. It's caffeine-free and good for me. When I showed him my water bottle, my son made a loud sigh, as if he had run out of patience. As I apologized repeatedly, my son reluctantly began to eat the fried chicken. By the time he finished eating, Jason went to the kitchen, and after a while,
My goodness, please eat the dessert.
Saying so, my son placed homemade cookies on the table and banged the table with both hands. Of course. I'll have some. Smiling, as I picked up the last homemade dessert cookie, my son started to look satisfied.
Is it good?
Yes, it's delicious. And then, perhaps because I was full, I fell asleep soundly on the sofa as soon as I said, "Thank you for the meal." After a while, I found myself being placed in the passenger seat of my car. Driving was, of course, Jason. When he parked in a place where the sound of waves could be heard, my son forcibly pushed me over and moved me to the driver's seat. Furthermore, Jason started the car engine and placed my foot on the accelerator. That's it. Stop right there.
Huh?
I may have seemed asleep, but I've been awake the whole time. I sat up abruptly, stared at my son, then immediately turned off the car engine. This is how you drowned my husband and Nancy in the sea. My son was shocked by my words, his eyes widening.
What are you talking about? We just went for a drive.
Don't play dumb. Then why did you forcibly move me to the driver's seat? As I glared at my clearly flustered son, he either couldn't come up with an excuse or chose not to respond, just mumbling to himself. Nancy told me something interesting. Apparently, you don't even rush to work when you oversleep. And for someone in sales, you sure seem to lack something, don't you?
Huh? She said that?
Yes, she did. And there's more where that came from, so you better listen up. I conveyed to him I already knew that Jason had been wandering around without going to work, and that my husband's bank account, which had his father's inheritance, was already empty. After much deliberation, she decided to confront Jason, but as soon as he returned home, Jason went straight to his room and started making a phone call. Sensing something was amiss, Nancy eavesdropped and heard Jason say,
Don't worry. I'm about to receive a large sum of money soon, just like before. I'll support you.
And then ended the call. Just then, Nancy found her life insurance policy document, which she had no recollection of, with a substantial payout of $100,000, naming Jason as the beneficiary. Around the same time, it was discovered that Jason had been importing sleeping pills from overseas. Nancy sensed that you might be targeting her life. But it's not just that. She was also distressed, thinking you might have sent your father to his grave for inheritance purposes.
But that's just her speculation.
After eating the cookies you made, you were watching me with satisfaction as I fell asleep as if it was a great success. Isn't that the best evidence?
I just thought you liked them.
Then let's take the cookies to the police and have them examined. When I took out the cookies from my bag.
He
stammered, turning pale. In fact, I pretended to eat them, immediately went to the toilet to throw up, and kept the evidence in a bag for safekeeping. That's not all. I took out the contract for my life insurance policy in my name and thrust it in front of my son. I don't remember ever signing up for this life insurance. And what's more, just like Nancy, you're the one set to receive a hefty sum of $10,000. Such a wonderful arrangement, isn't it? As I said this sarcastically, Jason looked flustered, his eyes darting around.
Maybe you just forgot that you signed up for it, Mom?
I was truly appalled by my son's continued evasion, and as I shot him a stern look, I showed Jason the letter Nancy had written me before her passing. Watching him tremble as he scanned the words, I revealed. Right after this letter arrived, I had hidden cameras installed in your house to verify the truth. It also recorded you putting sleeping pills in the cookies. I showed Jason the footage on my phone. His delighted expression as he hummed while mixing the cookies seemed devilish, likely thrilled at the prospect of soon obtaining a large sum of money. Putting someone to sleep like that. Do you find joy in taking people's lives? Feeling a mix of sadness and frustration, I involuntarily choked up. But instead of showing any remorse, my son quickly reverted to his usual demeanor.
I accidentally mixed up the sleeping pills Nancy had from the hospital with sugar. Plus, there's no evidence linking me to what happened to you and Nancy, right?
Excuse me? He seemed rather confident, almost as if he had successfully dodged any suspicion, with a smirk playing on his lips.
All we did today was go for a drive, right? Nancy just misunderstood and wrote that letter. And Mom just forgot about the insurance policy. I don't think the police will take any action based on this.
Placing his hand on his hip and tilting his head back, Jason laughed triumphantly. You think you can get away with anything as long as there's no evidence? My anger surged at Jason's cowardly attitude. But I hadn't walked into this situation unprepared either. There are hidden cameras installed in this car too. They captured the moment you forcibly pushed me from the passenger seat to the driver's seat. I revealed. My son tilted his head, almost mocking me.
So what?
The autopsy results of your father and Nancy mentioned a strange bruise on the side, not consistent with the accident. It was caused by you forcibly moving them to the driver's seat, rubbing against the side brake. I explained, lifting my jacket to reveal the freshly reddened area. To my surprise, Jason had inadvertently demonstrated how to create such a bruise using me as a prop in front of the hidden camera. We'll have the shape of the bruise and the side brake verified with the camera footage. With other evidence combined, there's no way you can escape now. When I showed him the image of the history of my son purchasing sleeping pills online, enclosed with Nancy's letter, he tightened his grip and his lips trembled. Jason's nothing but a liar. You wanted money because you got hooked on a DJ and were burning through cash, right? After saying that, I showed him pictures of Jason going to the club to meet the DJ and taking countless photos together. Furthermore, I confronted him with photos I took when I opened my son's closet. It must have been what Jason meant when he told the person on the phone, I'll support you. Surprisingly, there were 500 photos taken with the DJ. And Jason bought 100 of the same CD for $30 each, along with $28 trillion shirts and heaps of costumes for fans worth hundreds of dollars. Nancy couldn't find where Jason had put all the merchandise he bought. Surely, he hid them somewhere and brought them home after his wife passed away, leaving his son with them. Despite growing suspicion and no decisive evidence, Nancy suffered considerably, overwhelmed by her anguish. In case of emergency, she wrote a letter entrusting a friend, saying,
I just want my mother-in-law to be safe.
You're such a heartless person for using sleeping pills to drown your family in the sea. Thanks to my daughter-in-law's letter, I survived. But neither my husband nor Nancy returned to this world. Only an indescribable emptiness swirled within me. I wanted to believe Nancy had just misunderstood. But you acted exactly as she imagined. Jason realized he couldn't talk his way out of this one and turned pale. Jason exclaimed.
Even if you're a parent, you have no right to snoop around someone else's house.
You're the one who took away our family's lives and now you're talking nonsense. This DJ is going to marry a handsome actor. You're just a cash cow. I showed my son today's online news. He was so desperate to delete me that he didn't even notice the news.
No way. She said she wanted to share eternal dreams with me.
Save that talk for bedtime. The one who will always be there for you is not the DJ, but your family. My son realized everything had ended in failure and burst into tears on the spot.
I did so much for her. I've been betrayed.
You're the only one who betrayed the family.
Mom, please. I'll change and work a little. Just forgive me.
Jason clung to me, crying like a baby. Such rotten determination to work a little after sacrificing so many people. The feelings entrusted to me by Nancy and the words left by my husband came back strongly. Always thinking about yourself. Anyone who does wrong must face consequences. I pushed my son away and called the police on the spot. Despite repeatedly bowing his head to me until the police arrived, Jason begged.
Mom, please, let's settle this peacefully.
But I had no iota of intention to forgive him. When my son, whom thought had become irredeemable, attacked me, he was subdued by the arriving police officers and taken away. No matter how much he screamed, he himself had pushed away the family who would have helped him. In front of me, all that remained was the red-tinted sea illuminated by the police car's lights, quietly rippling. I will never forgive him. After that, my son was arrested and is now facing trial. The lawyer said,
"He might never come out again."
I visit my husband's and daughter-in-law's graves every day and it has become a routine to update them on Jason's situation. After visiting the graves, I go to theater rehearsals. Actually, a friend in the theater group taught me how to pretend to sleep, and I was praised for being convincing and even joined the group. Surprisingly, I'll be the cast as the lead role in the next performance. I realized my own talent in an unexpected way. Instead of dwelling on it, I will move forward with a positive attitude towards life.